Welcome back, RoxxStars. It's yet another episode of From the Vault. Rikki Roxx, God of Thunder, Lord of Rock and Roll, action figure fan par excellence, coming back at you with the retro action figure review. Today is going to be a very, very, very special episode of From the Vault. It's the holiday season. Technically, we're filming this one right before New Year, and didn't get it out in time for Christmas this year. It was a little busy. A lot busy. Took us hours to open our presents at Casa de Rockstar. It was a fantastic Christmas, one of the best ever. Hope you guys had a great one too. One of the reasons my Christmas was so great was because I got a lot of He-Man toys. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Everybody knows one of my favorite brands of all time. From my first Christmas and all the way up till now, getting more He-Man stuff is always one of my favorite parts of Christmas. That's why, a lot of Christmases in the 90s and 2000s kind of sucked because there wasn't a lot of that going on, But now, thanks to Mattel, we've got Origins, we've got Masterverse, we've even still out there in the wild, you can still find classics if you're willing to cough up a car payment. And they're not coming back, by the way. They're not coming back, guys. I love you. They're not coming back. They're great, though. I love them. But anyway, I got some cool Origin stuff. I got some cool Masterverse stuff. And that really takes me back to my earliest, youngest childhood and some of my best Christmas presents I ever got. I've told you guys this before. Some of the best Christmases I ever had were centered around He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So this year was just like being born again in a way. It was great. I got some awesome stuff, and rest assured we're going to be talking about all of it here eventually on the channel. I know I keep promising to do more He-Man stuff. It's just I'm a little overwhelmed. If you saw the stuff I have, you'd be flipping out. I could open a store, except I'm not getting rid of any of this stuff. That's not why I bought it. I bought it to cherish it and to share it with all of you guys. New Masterverse movie Evelyn is great, the Two Bad figures great. There's just so much cool stuff happening. But some things I know would be a little bit extreme to ask someone else to get for me. Some things, some certain boutique or luxury items, I would just feel bad if I asked someone else to gift them to me. So there's certain things out there in life that I prefer to take care of for myself, just so other people don't have to shoulder the burden. I'm fine with it. And this year, I got myself a very, very special present. Something I've been wanting all year, but the timing just wasn't right. And then finally, Christmas time rolled around. I said, you know what? You worked hard this year, God of Thunder. You won all your matches. You've been tearing up New Jersey, Pennsylvania. You've been undefeated everywhere you go. You're an uncrowned champion in at least 2 federations. So you earned yourself a special little treat. And so has the camera person who desperately needs a lozenge. Take care of that. While I'm taking care of this, we're taking care of Horseman business right here tonight on From the Vault. We're all having a little fun. It's been a long holiday. The party actually technically never stopped, and now it's the day before New Year's Eve. So it's just that's what we do here. We party all the time. Party, rock and roll. We're living the dream here, and the best part is getting to celebrate the true meaning of Christmas. Like I told you last year, it's toys. It's always toys, specifically He-Man toys. Last year, we talked about one of my favorite figures of all time. I still have him right here. He's never gone off display since then. The Masterverse 40th Anniversary He-Man figure. Love it. Love everything about it, except for a few minor things like I talked about last time. Go watch that video if you have not, or even if you have. It's a great video, one of my favorites. God, it's hard to be humble. But I am, because my last video, my Halloween episode, only got like 28 views. So yeah, you guys are great at keeping a guy humble. But the good news is, my previous video, the Snake Mountain review, that got over 600 views. I'm so grateful. You guys are awesome. I love you guys. But so it seems like He-Man stuff equals ratings. So serendipitously, I got myself another Christmas present that has to do with He-Man. Definitely get this guy if you haven't. Love him. This time, it's more than double your pleasure, double your fun, more than triple your pleasure. We're going with 4 times the fun here on From the Vault because Mattel released a ton of stuff to commemorate the 40th anniversary of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. And what we're going to talk about today is one of my favorite things. And now that I have it, I'm even more in love with it. You guys are going to wait patiently just one moment, because you're going to savor it just like I am. When I got this thing in the mail, I just was even too excited to open it because I just had to drink it in, man. So we're going to do that just a second. And I'm also going to be cursing a lot in this video, more than likely, because I'm just too excited and I don't give a shit. You guys can tuck your kids in, or you can smarten them up and let them know how the real world works. This is New Jersey, goddammit, and we use fuck instead of commas when we talk. So that's the way it is. That's the way it's going to be. So when you're as excited as I am, you just can't hold it all in, because we are talking about the 40th anniversary Mattel Masters of the Universe Origins 4-pack. All 4 versions of animated He-Man from the 80s to the 21st century and beyond. Dig it. We got all 4 of the main iconic animated He-Man characters. We've got the original Filmation version represented. We have New Adventures, or Space Pirate He-Man, or Yoga Pants He-Man, as I like to mockingly call him. Sorry, Jack. I know you're a good sport. And then we've got 2003 or 2000X, what have you, 21st century Masters of the Universe He-Man. And fourth and finally, bringing up the tail end, we have CGI Netflix He-Man, Fortnite He-Man, some people like to call him. So all 4 of the main cartoon versions of He-Man are represented in this box set. And, you know, there's the full A to Z. This is the basic box it comes in, and, you know, right away you know you're getting something special. It looks like something like, you know, you'd find in a museum almost. So on the back, you know, they all 4 of them striking the iconic pose. Love that. You know, that's the one thing they all kind of had in common to some degree, because there was a lot of variance in between other versions of it. And of course on the front you got this great shot of He-Man holding up the sword. Only thing I would change is they gave him that silly H logo instead of the cross like he's supposed to have. But I mean, I get that. They're trying to phase that out sometimes. Going forward, they still use it on a lot of retro merchandise, but going forward they want us to accept the H. I get it, but you know, if you were there, you know, and you're biased. But so yeah, this is the packaging, and we're gonna take it out of the packaging. I couldn't wait for this episode. I had to look at all the stuff that's inside, all the goodies, and it is great. It is fantastic. I don't even have to open it to tell you guys you should get this right away. But some of you are going to want to stick around anyway and see what I have to say about each and every individual figure in turn, and that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you the A to the Z baba of all 4 figures in this box set, and we're even going to talk about the amazing packaging that's inside. So we're going to hang out. I'm going to take this bad boy out after I have a couple more sippy sips. We are going to look at each of the four figures. We're not going to go in release order. We're going to go from... we're just going to bounce around a little bit. You'll see what I mean. We're keeping it loose here on From the Vault like we always do. No script, no planning, no foresight, no rough outlines, no rough draft, no writer's meeting. It is what it is, and you know, that's why you guys keep coming back. So stick around. I'm going to get a little more toasty, and we are going to have some fun. I am so excited. We'll be back. Alright, so we have taken this beautiful, beautiful box out of its original slipcase packaging. There is some tissue paper to protect this guy from the interior of the box. You know, it's very snug. What you get is this really cool looking box case that looks like a futuristic TV of sorts. Very slick. So here you got the you know, the base, and then on the other side you got the 40th anniversary He-Man logo there. Very cool. Like, this looks like something that you would see the characters look at in the old Filmation cartoon. That's what it reads to me. So on the front here, look at that. Beautiful, beautiful artwork. Hopefully there's not too much glare. Okay, so what we have here is this gorgeous artwork of the 4 animated versions of not just He-Man, but also Skeletor. Skeletor is not represented in this box set, and so far only a couple of the versions of Skeletor have been done in Origins scale. So maybe they'll do another box set of Skeletors. I would definitely buy it. Now, this set is still available on the Mattel Creations website where it initially came out. It still is $150, which some people skipped because they think it was a little overpriced. But you know what? A set like this comes along once in a lifetime, and it's beautiful, and it is very slick, and for what you get, yeah, I know you're paying a lot of money per figure and all that, but you know, some of these figures you're only going to get in this set, at least for now. I don't know if they plan to do other versions later on. I don't know if they plan to release single card figures of some of the characters. They've done some so far they haven't. But for now, this is the only way you can get Origins figures for the CGI He-Man, New Adventures He-Man, as well as the versions of Filmation and 2000X He-Man in this set are a little different than the single card figures, so they're still worth getting even if you have those. But yeah, I really dig the box art here. I like that the logo, the Masters of the Universe logo, as well as the versions of He-Man and Skeletor that are most prominent, are in fact the Filmation style, because that's where it all began. Without that, we wouldn't have any of what came later. That's just the facts, Jack. So, even though it was of its day for sure, and I have a lot of love for the 2003 cartoon series, I, always go back to Filmation because that's where the roots were for animated He-Man. Not a perfect show, dated for sure, but, I still love it. Like I said, this case really reminds me of something you'd see them sitting around looking at on the old show. In the back, you just got the artwork there. So it's pretty slick. They didn't have to go to all this trouble, but they did. And yeah, I'm taking this opportunity to admire the artwork myself. Pretty cool. So yeah, that is the case. Really big fan of what they do with all their collector's packaging. I've ordered a few things from Mattel Creations in the past, and some people have issues with their shipping and things like that. I have not had those experiences, so I cannot speak to that, but I respect you. So far, I've had great luck. When it comes to buying things online, I've gotten very lucky. Just like I've gotten lucky with my buddies at the flea market. I don't know. For some reason, when it comes to collecting toys, I've been blessed, and that's at least that's one area of my life where things worked out. I can't do much right, but God knows I can buy toys. I'm good at that shit. So yeah, let's crack this guy open. See what you get here. So, top part comes off very easily. The artwork is a separate piece. So if you want to, you gotta be careful it doesn't fall out. But yeah, it's removable if you do want to remove that. Very cool. Okay. And then here you get the 4 different versions of He-Man. Filmation, New Adventures, 2003 or 2000X, and the recent 2021 CGI Netflix He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Fortnite He-Man, as some would say. So yeah, really cool set they have here. I love the representation, even though some of these versions of He-Man are not my favorite. We're going to look at each of the 4, one by one, and we are going to get our hands on these, and we're going to show you what it's all about. Stick around, we'll be back in just a moment, and we're going to start with, well, you'll find out. I'm not going to tell you everything. I'm going to make you sweat a little bit. Alright, we are back, and we are going to start in the most recent place. Now I'm just doing a thing. So we're going to start with my least favorite animated version of He-Man, but not a bad figure. I'm going to start with 2021 Netflix He-Man or Fortnite He-Man, CGI He-Man. Right away, what I want to talk about is how each of the 4 figures in this box set has similar packaging that's designed to look like a thing, an ancient relic that we had back in the 20th century called a TV guide. Back in those days, you'd have to get this little book. A book is like the internet, but on paper. And you would get this little book at the grocery store as you were ringing up your food, and you would buy this book, and it would tell you what was going to be on TV all week. And every week you had to buy a new one. And if you were smart, you just had it sent to your house. But otherwise, you got it at the grocery line. So here they've done a clever thing calling it MOTU Guide instead of TV Guide. Guide to Masters of the Universe. Very cool. So on the spine here, you've got the logo as well as the original air date for this He-Man Through the Ages box set. The original air date for each show is printed on the spine. I think that's pretty nifty. Here we've got the original 2021 air date for the Netflix series. This show was not around very long, did not do too well. The fabled brand new audience once again failed to show up. I feel like they alienated the older fans too much. I saw very little of this show. I did not care for it, but apparently some people did. Not enough to keep the show going. It is what it is. So anyway, on the front you get this really cool shot of the figure itself, and then here it looks like the pages of one of those books, right? This is what it would look like. You squish a lot of paper together, and that's what it looks like. So it's meant to look like the pages of a book. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, MOTU Guide. But the most clever thing is on the back here, they have an actual Saturday morning lineup here. This is really cool, because that's when kids would predominantly watch cartoons back then, was Saturday mornings. You'd get up early and you would watch cartoons. So this would tell you when they were on and what was on, and it's really cool. What they did here is they took a lot of popular themes and shows and reworked the titles to play into a Masters of the Universe theme. I think that is incredibly, incredibly clever. Now, the jokes do repeat on all 4 figures. You've got quite a few very funny ones here. You've even got even a wrestling one. MOTWU Superstars, Sports Entertainment. Booyaka Tribe versus Horde World Order. Very cute, very cute. Tales from the Fright Zone. Frightuchurama. Frighturama, whatever. Cringer's Cartoon Corner. Talking with Tila. Simply Sorcery with Evil Lyn. This is some really funny stuff. Like, if you were around back then and you ever saw one of these TV guides, oh my goodness, this is exactly what it looked like. And as I said, they would rock on out. Ha 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 ha. Merman's Undersea Adventures. That would be interesting to see. How I Met Marlena. Oh goodness. I'm actually looking at these more closely for the first time. This is fun. So yeah, they did a good job with these. Snake Men on a Plane. Oh goodness. And on the bottom, you have the glamour shot of the figure itself, along with the logo. And the airtime, that's when you would hypothetically get up early in the morning to watch that show. In real life, it was on Netflix. All you had to do was stream it. It's always on. But nobody did. Oh, that's mean. So anyway, so this show aired from September 16th, 2021 onward. And it was a half-hour animated series. And it was a very dramatic change from what most people would know and recognize as He-Man. For my money, it was a little too dramatic of a change. You'll hear me say that again later on about something else, but for now we're going to focus right here. But we're here to talk about the toy itself, just the action figure. If the show didn't do well, or wasn't popular, or if it was too different from what most people recognize as He-Man, that's not the toy's fault. I collect toys sometimes of things that I didn't particularly love just because the toys are cool. I've got some Superman Red and Blue action figures, and I hated that story. But I still bought the toys because they're neat looking toys and I love Superman, right? So I've got some He-Man variants of things that I wasn't necessarily in love with, but I love He-Man, and not that I buy everything, right? Not that I buy everything. But if it looks cool, I'll get it. That's basically what I'm saying. If something just looks too cool to pass up, I gotta get it. So this box set was one of those things, and I knew that this figure in Origins style, I'm all for another Origins style figure of any kind. I love that they're finding new stuff to put in to this line, the Sunman stuff and now the new Filmation cartoon collection coming out. It really is amazing to see. At one point, people thought this was a dead brand, and now they've got a line out that's got more figures than the original, and that just blows my mind. So, to bring old school and new school together, which is what we always talk about here on the channel, this figure in its own way is a great representation of that. So they're all set up the same. Glamour shot on the front and back with the TV guide, all that stuff. Really cool. They're all just reworked a little bit for each individual figure. Taking them out of the package here. Slides out very simply. They have a little tissue paper inside to protect the front of the figure itself. Very neat. Just stash it over here. And yeah, this is very cool. This is very cool. Hopefully, again, not too much glare. But once again, doesn't matter if I didn't like the show. I didn't like the show. Doesn't matter, brother. This is a really great toy with a really great package, and I'm all over this. If this was a single card figure sold in stores, I'd even buy it just to have, because it's just a cool looking figure with a cool looking box, and it's a version of He-Man, unique, all its own. Not my favorite by any means, no, but it's just cool in its own way. You got to be objective, and that's just my opinion, man. I just think it's cool in its own way, even though did not like the show, did not want to watch the show. But yeah, like all that lightning in the background, for the God of Thunder, I'm going to be down with that. That is really cool. I like the bluish background is a deviation from the traditional red background for a lot of Masters of the Universe packaging, but I dig it. This version of Masters of the Universe was trying to be its own thing completely, and I respect it, even though I did not like or agree with a lot of the choices they made or a lot of things they did. But given the devil its due, that's a cool looking figure with a cool looking box. On the back here, got the glamour shot by the Power, Grayskull, sword in the air, wacky looking sword, but what can you do? Like I said, I didn't agree with every choice, but it's cool artwork for this individual, unique version of the most powerful man in the universe. Again, he's got his the costume that he wore and everything, the hairstyle. All the details are there, man. They released much bigger action figures for the subline or its own unique line that this cartoon had. That series didn't do too well. You can get a lot of those figures online for clearance right now for like $5 or less. That, just like the show, the toys didn't do well. I didn't get any of those, but I did want this because it's in the Origins scale, and I love collecting Origins. Anytime a new Origins figure comes out, I am all about it. So another thing they all do is they have this incredible and considerate slip-out packaging to keep the artwork intact. It just slides right out perfectly. Love that. Packages little creases there. Very considerate. They really went all out with this set. They even got the little plastic guard pieces inside to keep the figure from rubbing up against the front of the package. And you got He-Man himself strapped in with the rubber bands. Those I am going to cut. I hate those things because this is a set designed for you to be able to take the figure out and move it around, put it back in the package again without too much fuss. So I am going to kill those rubber bands, get them off of there. But, they want to make sure things don't shift too much during transport. I understand that. But so yeah, you've got He-Man and his sword on the back. We're going to come back in just a moment with this guy completely freed from his plastic prison on full display. We're going to take a closer look at Netflix He-Man here on From the Vault, from the 40th anniversary He-Man Through the Ages animated series box set. Stick around. Here he is, He-Man, most powerful man in the universe. The man who wields the power, the secrets of Castle Grayskull, as he appeared in the Netflix 2021 CGI animated series. Now, all the details are there, all the little things that make this character, this version of He-Man, unique. It's all there in Origins scale. I can't be mad about any of that. Doesn't matter that it's not my favorite version of He-Man. This is just a cool looking figure, and it represents the series well, while adding another awesome variant of He-Man himself to the Origins action figure line. I've gushed over the Origins line before. Nothing's changed. It's still one of my favorite toy lines going. I still grab everything I can from it, so I knew I had to get this box set, and I had to get my hands on this specific He-Man figure. You've even got the chrome-looking vac metal or whatever power sword. That's going to be a theme in this box set with the weapons. This version of He-Man only comes with his power sword, but, I mean, geez, look at the size of that thing. That's like a Final Fantasy sword right there. That thing is a little bit crazy. Not the first time we've seen that with some version or other of He-Man. Not my favorite choice. I prefer a sleeker, longer, more slender power sword. I don't think it needs to be clunky or huge, but you know, it's a choice. It's a choice they made, and this figure represents well for what it is. Can't be mad about it. We're going to take a little bit more hands-on, up-close look. We're going to move him around a little bit, but yeah, take it in. This is what you get, brother! This is the most recent animated series version of He-Man as of 2021. Doesn't look like there'll be any more episodes, but you know, it's still out there if you want to watch it on Netflix. I don't, but you might. So, we're going to come back in just a second and look at this figure a little more up close and personal. Hang out for just a minute. Alright, we're back, and here we are with CGI Netflix He-Man from He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. You know, the more I mess with this figure, move him around, the more cool I think it is. It's not going to change my opinion of the show one bit. However, the figure itself is a cool toy. Face-wise, like the head, I mean, as far as capturing a CGI cartoon character as a toy, it's definitely one of the better attempts I've seen, really. Pretty happy with how that turned out, you know. Not a huge fan of the general design, but I mean, as a figure, it's not bad. I mean, you know, if this was just another variant He-Man costume that came out, I wouldn't even mind. I mean, Lord knows, back in the 2000X era, I picked up way weirder looking versions of He-Man than this guy. So yeah, he's pretty cool. He's got a pretty cool all black outfit with the silver accents. He still has a harness. Like, I don't know why he necessarily has to be wearing a ninja outfit under his body armor, but it's whatever. It's their attempt of making it look more modern. I don't know. It's whatever. It doesn't look bad. Like I said, there's way weirder looking He-Man variants than this, and I like that they still gave him the power harness in its own form. That's a cool thing. Not a fan of the HM logo on the chest. I think it's a little bit too superhero, you know, a little bit too DC or Marvel or whatever. It looks kind of like something a superhero from the 90s from DC would have, and you know, he's kind of a superhero, but I don't know, that's a little bit on the nose. I don't like him having a trademarkable logo on his chest. I thought the cross was simple and fine, but it's whatever. Belt into a more of a leather-looking loincloth, I guess, than a furry one. This one is made of a really pliable, rubbery plastic there, so that's pretty cool. You know, it moves around pretty good, so it doesn't restrict the movement of the figure. Got the big silver boots. Like, this is a more modernized attempt to kind of do, like, I guess a more sci-fi or futuristic looking version of He-Man with elements of the classic design, like the harness and the loincloth, and I do get that. Uh, it's just, I like it when it's a little bit more traditional barbarian, more of a Conan riff. That's always been my style of He-Man. He's got the markings on his arm. I didn't watch enough of the show to see exactly what that's about or represent. It's weird, but it's fine. It's fine. Like, I guess maybe it's the power flowing through him. I guess that's fine if that's what that's supposed to be. It's cool. Like, what I like about it is that it's a unique version of He-Man done as an origin style figure. I can't get enough of that. That's the whole reason I got this box set. There's been a million versions of He-Man out there, and to me, they're all cool in their own way, and I love getting them in a consistent format. And to me, that's what Origins has been great at. Masterverse is getting there too. That's a great line you should be picking up. If you're not, you should be, because they just keep getting better. And I know Origins is going to soon go to the Mattel Creations website while their Filmation line goes to retail. That's cool with me too. So I don't know if we're ever going to see a single carded version of this figure. I really don't know. It wouldn't shock me if they did, because they've done a lot of variants and re-releases. So they very well may want to get their money's worth out of this mold by releasing a single card version, but for now they have not. This box set's about 2 years old now, I think. And it is a limited edition, but you can still get it on the Mattel Creations website for about $150 for the box set. So right now, this is still the only place you can get this figure. And I am glad I got this figure, because it's interesting. It's unique among He-Mans. The sword is not my favorite kind of sword. It's big. It's clunky. It's got that future tech look that the 2003 sword had that was very controversial then. I see what they were doing here, right? They were kind of in their own way trying to merge elements of all the different He-Mans into one modern version. You got like a big clunky sword from 2000X. You got the harness and the loincloth symbolically from the original series. You've got him wearing long pants like the New Adventures series. So you got a little bit of everything in there. I do get that. And it's cool that they sort of merged all the different versions of He-Man into one and came up with something unique like this. There's still elements that are very easy to identify as He-Man. You know, who else walks around carrying a big sword calling down the lightning? You know, who else still, besides me, is rocking such a glorious mullet? Who else would be wearing that harness with a big H on his chest, right? Obviously, it's He-Man. Maybe it's not your favorite He-Man. It's definitely not mine. But do I love this figure? Hell yeah, I love this figure. I'm so glad I got it. It's really cool. Like I said, there's been a few other toy lines that try to represent a 3D CGI cartoon as an action figure. This is one of the better attempts I've seen. I still think his face is a little goofy looking, but you know, it's whatever. That version of He-Man looked like this. This is what he looks like, so it's great with me. The sword has a little peg, so it slips right into the hole on the back of his harness. Pretty slick, really cool. Fits in there nice and snug. No problems there. So you can just pose the figure without the sword, battle ready. That's a really cool touch. One of the things that always bothered me about a lot of the He-Man figures is that the way they've got the spot for the weapon in the back of their harness, it kind of like will make the harness pop open, you know? So here they just kind of got around that problem by making a hole in his back with a peg. It's a little clunky, but it works, you know? It's a good solution. I don't dislike it as a solution. I think it's a good way to keep the weapon out of the way without hurting the harness itself, you know? I got no problem with the way they did that. As you can see, it kind of just goes there. Pretty cool. No problems. Articulation. I love the articulation on all the Origins figures, and this figure is pretty snug, man, but not in a bad way. It's snug in a way that no matter how you move it, it stays there for you. You know, like the shoulders have a little bit of a ratchet going on, you know, nice job there. Got that swivel and hinge at the elbow there, the wrists. A lot of articulation in the Origins figures, man, and that's one of the reasons I love them so much. They pack a ton of articulation into what by modern standards is a kind of small figure. But, you know, 5.5 is what we grew up in, you know, back in the day. Back in the original vintage Mattel days, 5.5 is what you had, and that's what you loved, and that's what you were all about. The legs, you know, you don't got that rubber band in them anymore. Some really good, snug articulation here. These ankles are a lot more snug than some of the Origins I've played with, so that's really cool. You know, the sword makes him a little heavy on either side that he's got it in, so that can kind of make you force to get him into some funky poses, but, you know, doesn't matter. This is a really, really friggin' cool version of He-Man and a really cool action figure, only available in this 40th anniversary box set as far as I know. I think I'm doing the Raven pose for some reason, I don't know why. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, he's nice. He's doing the Scott Hall thing. What the fuck is going on? Okay, anyway. Oh, boy. So, yeah, really cool figure, even though I'm not a huge fan of the show it's based on. Doesn't matter. Does not matter. A cool toy is a cool toy, and this is a cool toy. Articulation is great. Sword pops right out of his back and right back into his hand. Nice and snug like that. By the power of Grayskull, he faux show has the power. There he is. There it was. I don't have a Castle Grayskull to accompany this figure yet. There's actually one they did do that was floating around at deep discount recently. I haven't picked it up, but, you know, thinking about it, I don't know. It's kind of bare bones compared to the Castle Grayskull we all know and love, but I kind of thought about getting it just to have a backdrop for this figure if I ever want to display him out of the package. But yeah, this is, so far they're 1-for-1 with me. They won me over with this figure, and I don't even like this version of He-Man, but this is a great fucking figure, man. How are you going to say no to another He-Man variant in your Origins line, right? It's unique, it's stylish, it's all its own thing. I don't care that it's not my favorite. I love it for what it is, you know? That's what we're all about here, man. Trying to recognize everything uniquely on its own, positives, negatives. That's what I try to do with every toy I review. I'm objective as hell when it comes to this shit, and I objectively love this figure despite the fact that I really don't like the show it's based on. Love the toy. So glad they included it in this 40th anniversary box set. We're going to come back next with something I liked a little bit better, and you're just going to have to wait and see what that is. But for now, 1-for-1. Love this Netflix He-Man action figure. Only available for now in this box set, so I am even more enthralled. I know there's a Masterverse version as well, which I didn't pick up yet, but when I do, you can bet we're going to be back to take a look at that as well. So stick around. We're going to take a look at another figure from this amazing 40th anniversary He-Man Masters of the Universe box set. Stick around. And we're back with a version of He-Man that I actually like a lot better. In fact, one of my favorites. And that is the 2000X, a lot of people call it, version of He-Man Masters of the Universe. Originally debuted actually in 2002. August 2002, in fact. This version has the distinction of being the only He-Man ongoing animated series not to debut in September. A little trivia for you. This one actually debuted in August. I was there for it. I remember it, man. That 2-part episode. I couldn't wait for it because this was not the first time that He-Man and Masters of the Universe had been rebooted. Now, there had been a reboot before that and it was very controversial. We will talk about that very shortly. But yeah, in the late 90s, He-Man was redone for a new audience, and shockingly, it didn't really win the world over, and He-Man went away for a very long time, and I was very mad about that. I was very mad at the show for that. I blamed it for He-Man failing and going away and all that stuff, but then in the early 2000s, all of a sudden, He-Man was back, and I couldn't be more excited at that time, because not only did I never stop loving He-Man and Masters of the Universe just as much as I did when I was 1 year old, 2 years old, I never stopped loving the character. I never stopped loving the show, the toys, any of that. It's just that it went away for a while. And because of that, there was nothing new for me to experience from that brand. So the 90s were a very long decade for me because of that. And then all of a sudden in the early 2000s, He-Man was back, and it was like everything old was new again. Because unlike New Adventures, the 2002 2000X series was in its own way familiar to what we knew, but in its own way also totally modern, reinvented. I was such a huge fan, and most importantly, this time around, I had a job and my own money to buy the toys. That was a huge deal. I set out to get as many as I could. I got, just like the vintage line actually, I ended up about 2/3 of the way through before the later figures I just wasn't able to get my hands on. I'm still on the hunt for them, but, I'll get them in turn, rest assured. I am doing my best to complete all the He-Man lines from vintage. I don't have any New Adventure stuff, but anyway. So this figure here is an Origin-style recreation of the 2000X 2002 version of He-Man. The first successful, I would say, the first successful reinvention of He-Man and Masters of the Universe. And for my money, it was successful where other reboots failed because it didn't go completely away from what fans knew and recognized as He-Man. There were definitely some things that were different, but there were also some things that were very, very familiar and just modernized, given a new coat of paint, so to speak, but not off the reservation by any means. I was a huge fan of this redesign. I mean, you got the checkers on the straps on the harness. That was something that the Filmation-based figure in this series differentiated by, because it didn't have. You got the redone logo, which, just like before, we've got the TV guide motif, very clever. I really love this redesign of He-Man with the vintage face, but the modernized haircut. Very cool. Definitely a nice mashup of styles there. On the back, once again, you've got the mock TV guide listings. Same jokes, just moved around a little bit. You got the glamour shot on the bottom of the figure. Yeah, I mean, I love the way these packages present the figure. I mean, they're very dramatic, and they definitely jump out at you. So yeah, then just like before, they slide right out with a little tissue paper holding you, protecting the figure from the case. I mean, it's just nice that they went to that trouble. It's just nice. So here we've got this awesome backdrop. You got this great, great figure and this great recreation of the 2000 and X toy line card art. The back is totally different. The back is just a really nice looking piece of artwork featuring this version of He-Man. Again, just all the little touches, all the little things that make it so awesome. Really love that. That unique version of Castle Grayskull with the super long teeth and just all that. And then you go, again, I don't agree with every choice they made for this series either. The giant techno sword and whatnot, but the logo on the chest. But I still love the design, and I loved the cartoon. This to me is maybe objectively the best He-Man cartoon. I mean, if you were going to give any He-Man show to somebody to watch and tell them this is why He-Man is cool, this is why you should like it, I would say it would be this animated series for sure. It's just a little bit more mature and well thought out than the original Filmation series. But yeah, great design here. Great design on He-Man. This is not actually identical, believe it or not, to the single card version that they did sell at retail. They did sell a version of 2000X He-Man at retail as part of the Origins line, but it's not completely identical to this one. A lot of the paint is different, and the weapons are not done in the same vac metal style on the single card figure. They're a bit more of a plain silver. But yeah, so this is definitely still worth getting, even if you have that figure. We're going to take it out of the package in just a second, and we're going to do the deal just like before. But man, you know, they do such a great job with these. Again, it's not uniquely, or it's not exactly accurate to the toy line that came out back then, but it's very reminiscent of, with the logo and the colors, the red and the blue logo. Very cool stuff. We're going to come back and we're going to take this guy out. We're going to mess with him. Been wanting to do that ever since this guy came in the mail. This is a great box set. I love it already. Stick around. We're going to do the deal in just a second. Hang out. Alright, representing the early 2000s reboot of He-Man Masters of the Universe. One of my favorite versions of this character. I already have the single card version, haven't opened it yet. I haven't opened most of my Origins figures because we are going to start doing episodes on those in the near future. But even though I had the single card figure, I knew that this version was different enough in its own way. Slightly different paint, you got the metallized finish on the weapons. Different card back, you know, it's got the collector's packaging. This is its own version of this figure. I definitely say, even if you have the single card, this is worth picking up as part of the box set. You know, this is a great set. I'm 2 figures in, and I'm already in love with it. I mean, this is such a cool way of bringing the early vintage He-Man toy line together with the reboot. I remember a lot of people were not thrilled with the toys of the reboot because they were so different from the original toys. Now, I did understand that. I still loved that toy line. But, you know, I definitely would have loved something like this back in 2002, 2003. A version of He-Man that looked like the new cartoon, but was in the same style, toy-wise, as the vintage. So now you have a toy that brings the style of the original vintage figures with the aesthetics of the early 2000s cartoon. This is something I have been waiting 20 years to see. I love this figure. We're going to be back in just a second with a little bit more hands-on, but for now, wow. All those details are there, man. This is what it's all about. Old school and new school together. This is what I love to see. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm already in love with it. And we still have 2 more figures to look at. Unbelievable. Cameraman, zoom it. Drink it in, Baba. A to the Z. We'll be back. Alright, let's talk about this fucking guy. So here we have him, He-Man from the early 2000s reboot. In Origin style with his unique paint job and vac metal weapons. These things are shiny. Really dig that. Really great look on these weapons. Dig that, man. You can almost see yourself. Actually, you can. They are very reflective. Right now, I can see the back of He-Man's head in the axe. That is just amazing. What a finish on these things. I definitely would take great care of these to make sure they didn't get too dirty or whatever. Because, wow, what a finish. This guy, I've had some trouble getting him to stand up until now. Before, when he was on that... Oh, there he goes. See, yeah, like, before we were doing the deal, when he was on that Uncle Spinny Dervish, he fell over, like, 3 times. But, like, he's being pretty good now. But, yeah, I had to kind of mess with his feet a little bit. But the joints are snug. I will say that. So far, these figures have really snug joints. They move well and they hold position well. You know, the shoulders have like a ratchet effect to them. You know, make sure that they hold their position really well. Good stuff. Head moves great. You know, you can get these guys. I love Origins figures because you can get these guys in all kinds of poses and they stay there. These feel a little bit more sturdy to me than the typical off-the-rack Origins figures, though. These, again, are collectible figures from this box set. Yeah, these things are pretty good. Again, you got to kind of mess with the legs a little bit. It might be because the weapons make them a little front-heavy, too. I don't know, but you can get them to stand. But so far, this one for me was a little harder to stand up than the other He-Man figure, the Netflix He-Man figure. But you can get them to, and they do have peg holes. If you want to get stands for them, you can. They got the peg holes. But yeah, so this dude, this He-Man has the coloring of the 2002 cartoon. You know, different coloring from the original He-Man, but the style, you know, the look with the checkered harness and everything is the same. I noticed mine has a tiny splotch of red paint on the harness there, just very tiny little splotch of red paint. I could probably take care of that easily. I guess it's worth pointing out. I'm sure it's not something they all have. It's probably just I got lucky in that respect, and I got that tiny little dot of red paint. But it's not going to bother me because it's on the back. If I ever want to fix it, I can. It's real easy. I just thought I'd point it out because I noticed it just now. The back of the harness has the weapon spot, you know, so you can slide stuff in there. It's definitely good for holding that axe. This guy comes with a whopping 3 weapons compared to the figure we just looked at, which only came with the power sword. This He-Man comes with the power sword, the shield, which looks great with that back metal finish, and of course that big giant battle axe. Whew, yeah, that thing looks like it could do some damage. I mean, again, the 2002 reboot took everything about the original He-Man and dialed it up to 11, right? It made everything a little bit more gritty, but also dialed it up bigger. Although, speaking of bigger, I will say the Power Sword, even though it's big and chunky, it's stubby compared to what it looked like in the cartoon and the toy line at the time. I expected the sword to be a lot bigger. I guess they were just kind of working with an origin scale for this for the most part, but considering the Netflix one is so huge, you'd think this sword they would have maybe done a little bit bigger, but it is what it is. It's got the details for the sword as it looked in the cartoon. It's got that text circuitry. It's got the logo on the hilt there, all that weird stuff. I do love the reflective finish though. I like how the colors are accurate to what He-Man looked like in that series. They gave him that weird haircut that everybody either likes or hates. I'm okay with it. Doesn't really bother me. It was the style at the time, so to speak. It is what it is. You know, definitely a little bit boy bandish, but what can you do? The weapons swap real easily, you know. That giant battle axe, you know, the weapons really show that everything was dialed up for this series because, like, the axe is way bigger and more deadly. The sword doesn't fit well in the slot on his back, though. The sword really doesn't fit, so that's definitely to hold the axe while he holds the sword. If you try to put the sword back there, it's not going to work. That's a bit of an unfortunate design flaw. He has to be holding the sword, or else you'd have to like put it next to him to pose him or whatever. If you wanted to pose him with the axe and shield, you know, but what can you do? You can actually pose him with the axe and the sword, though. You know, if you really want this guy to go like full gauntlet or whatever, you know, like, you know, this guy looks like he's gonna go hunt some orcs. But then, you know, like, you can't really do anything with the shield. You can kind of hang it loosely on the thing on his back, but it's gonna just like fall off if you move it. So it's just, but you can kind of like balance it there if you want to. You know, if you're just posing him and he's not gonna like be moved at all, I guess that's a thing you can do. But I don't know. I wish that's something I wish they could have maybe designed a little bit better. Is he has to be holding either the sword or the shield, or else they just can't really do much with him. You know, it's a design flaw with this thing. But you know, it is what it is. I love that they give you the 3 weapons, though. I think that's really cool. Very thoughtful, and I do know that the other figure, pretty sure, comes with the same weapons. They just don't look like this. They do swap really easily into the hands. Very cool. You know, the shields, every version of He-Man's shield is a bit of a pain to get on. But this one actually clips on really smooth. So yeah, it definitely gets a 10 for having that many accessories. That's a big thumbs up. The articulation is mostly really snug, especially the upper body, the shoulders. They definitely have like a ratchety effect. They feel really good moving them around. They feel like you can move them around without worrying about it. They're going to hold their position well. Really good stuff. Really snug there. Get them in all kinds of battle positions. Really love these Origins figures, man. I just can't say enough good things about them. Except, again, you might want to get a stand for some of the, if you want to pose them certain ways, because the legs can be a little finicky with how you choose to pose them. But, you know, everything is posable on these guys, so if you work a little bit, you could usually get them to do what you want. See, it's not that hard. It just takes a little doing sometimes. But for what you get, I mean, I love Origins. This is such a great line, and to have this figure here, a 2000 and X version in Origin scale. I already had the single card figure, had to get this figure as well. It's the little details that set it apart over its single card version. Love the extremely metallized finish on the weapons. Love all the ways they really represented that show in this toy. Old school to new school, even though 2002 isn't that new school anymore, but what can you do? To me, it still feels like yesterday, man. I remember being that age and running around spending all weekend going to every toy store, every place at the mall, at Toys R Us, at the flea markets, looking for figures from this toy line, from the 2002-2000X He-Man toy line. And, you know, Mattel, they notoriously kind of mismanaged that to a degree. Some would say they had noble intentions, because one of their stated goals with that toy line was to make sure that every kid that wanted one had a He-Man and a Skeletor, because those were the main characters. And they never wanted a kid to be able to say they went to the store and couldn't get He-Man and Skeletor. However, what that meant was that Mattel shipped 1 billion versions of He-Man and Skeletor to toy stores, and very few of Teela and Evelyn and Orko and all these other characters. So it made that line a real fucking pain in the ass to collect. I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic line for what it was at the time. It didn't have the best articulation. A lot of the poses were funky. The weapons made most of the figures very top-heavy, so they did not stand very well. The line did have a lot of imperfections. However, it was a great modernized representation of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe and all those amazing characters done in an amazing modernized art style. So the line wasn't perfect, but I still loved it, and I collected every single figure I could. However, Mattel and their distribution made it very difficult to do so, especially as the line went on and it got into the later waves. As I said, I had about 2/3 of that line, and then once it really got into the Snake Men series, they became very hard to get in my area, and when you could find them, they were immediately like $40, and it was crazy, and it just made everything a real pain. So I kind of fell off at the end there, but I've been meaning to get those last few figures that I just never managed to get, but I did get most of them. It took a lot of work, though. My wife worked at Toys R Us at the time, and she was lucky enough to be able to break the rules and stash a few aside for me. So I'm very grateful for that. That's exactly how I managed to get Evil Lyn when nobody could fucking find Evil Lyn at the time. That was the biggest one. Everybody wanted Evil Lyn, and you just couldn't find her. And, you know, I know that was kind of a jerk thing to do. People hate that, but let me tell you, back then it was necessary. Now people abuse the hell out of that shit, but back then, man, it was necessary. They were shipping Evil Lyn 1 to every 2 cases or some shit like that. It was garbage. It was nonsense. But, you know, I managed to get most of the figures. Almost all of the first few waves. Most of the vehicles. I have the Castle Grayskull playset. I should have dug that out for this, man. When I do the single card review, remind me to get the 2003 Castle Grayskull. Because we got to review that thing on this show, too. But anyway. So, yeah, I was a huge fan of the cartoon. I was a huge fan of the toy line, even though Mattel made the toys a real pain in the ass to collect. But I definitely would have, as much as I loved that series, I would have loved a toy like this. I would have loved a He-Man action figure in the style of the vintage with the aesthetics of the 2002 cartoon. This is a home run for me, man. This is about as awesome as it gets, even if you gotta fight the legs a little bit to get them to stand up. But overall, I love the posability, I love the look, I love the colors, I love the sculpt, I love the articulation, I love the vac metal weapons. This is an amazing figure. Another 10 out of 10. Home run, 2 out of 2 for this box set. We're going to be back in just a minute. There's still 2 figures to go. This is already an amazing episode. I'm having a great time. Merry fucking Christmas to me. We're going to be back. Stick around. Alright, so now we're going to jump a little bit further back in time. We're going to talk about the first reboot of He-Man. One that, as a kid, I really didn't care for so much. As an adult, I definitely appreciate more than I did then, taking it as its own thing. Obviously, I'm talking about the new Adventures of He-Man, which aired originally for 3 months, from September to December 1990. I remember watching this cartoon on Channel 22, which on my cable network was called Philly 57. It was the Philadelphia affiliate. But this show would come on at like 3:30 in the afternoon on Channel 22, Philly 57, on my cable box. Storer cable back then, which then I believe Comcast bought out. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, that's what I remember, man. And so, yeah, I'd come home from school and I'd get a snack and I'd sit down and I would give this show a chance. I did give this show a chance. I really did. And as a kid, I didn't like it. It was way too different from what I recognized and identified as He-Man. And forget about Masters of the Universe. They wasn't none. They weren't there. Not the way we remembered them. The characters that we knew were not there. To my understanding, the point was to do a reboot that was completely aimed at kids who had never heard of He-Man before. And that they had introduced this cartoon to that audience. And with that audience, it was supposedly a huge hit. So they went to market thinking they had a huge hit on their hands. But apparently the rejection from fans like myself who grew up on the original cartoon was so negative that there was just nothing to sustain this He-Man reboot. Now, that's part of the problem, to my understanding. There was also a toy line that I wanted nothing to do with as a kid, once again because it was completely incompatible with the original He-Man and Masters of the Universe toys that I loved so much and had at least 50 of at the time. And if those toys had been more in the style, as different as the cartoon was, as different as the character designs were, If the toys for the New Adventures of He-Man were more in the style of the original vintage He-Man toys and action figures, I definitely would have bought them. I would have just looked at them as yet another He-Man variant like Thunder Punch or whatever. This is Space Knight He-Man. Awesome. Perfectly fine. Just another action figure, right? Definitely would have bought them, but the New Adventures toys were so different from the original Masters of the Universe that I ignored them completely. I did want the toy Sword and Havoc staff, though. Those things were cool. But the figures, I didn't like them. Now I can kind of look back on them and see them differently, and I do kind of want some of them. I still don't have any. But what I would have loved as a kid was a New Adventures He-Man figure that was in scale and in the style of my vintage He-Man figures. And now, thanks to Mattel and this amazing box set, we have that with this guy here. This is New Adventures He-Man, ponytail, yoga pants, and all. It doesn't have the helmet that the original toy line came with, but I guess the ponytail would interfere with that. It's got the sword. This is a really faithful recreation of how He-Man looked in that cartoon show. Love the box art with these figures, man. I just really do. This is like these things look like museum pieces. These things look like they should like they should be hanging in a museum of pop culture art or something like that. Like these are awesome boxes. Once again, on the back you get the Saturday morning lineup. Apparently, all these shows aired at 9 p.m. Pacific. These He-Man cartoons. That's what it says on the back. Yeah, same jokes, just moved around, but again, I love the motif. I think they were very clever with this. You know, 1 of 4 collector's covers, ha ha ha. Really good stuff. You know, once again, old school meets new school. This would have been 83 meets 89. That's what this would have been. So, once again, we're going to slide it out here. Pop, pop, pop. You got the tissue paper protecting package from the figure and the figure from the package, and here we have 89 or 1990 He-Man. Yeah, technically 1990. I believe I think the toys started to roll out in 89 if I'm not mistaken. At one point, even some of the vintage Masters of the Universe He-Man figures were being sold with this He-Man logo on their packaging just to kind of get people ready for the reboot that was coming out in a year or two. So, I remember that. But yeah, this is really cool to me, man. As somebody who did not originally care for that cartoon as a kid, it was just way too different for me. But looking back at it now, I can totally appreciate it for what it is. And this figure is something that you can definitely appreciate for what it is. This is exactly what I wanted back in 1989, 1990. This is exactly what I would have bought. If this was on the shelves at Toys R Us back in 1990, I definitely would have bought this figure. I would have bought Skeletor. I would have bought everybody. If only they looked like this, forget about it, man. But they went off the rails and they did their own thing, and that's cool, man, but it wasn't for me. And, you know, I'm so glad, because of that, I'm so glad that we finally have this figure. To my knowledge, they haven't done a single card of this yet. I'm not sure if they will. Once again, I know that regular Origins is going to be going website exclusive pretty soon. But yeah, I'm definitely glad because of all those circumstances to finally have New Adventures He-Man in Origin scale. They've done them in Classics. They did them in Classics. They've done them in Masterverse. They've always done a really cool job of bringing that style of He-Man into like a better style and scale than what the original version of that toy line did. I mean, those toys, they were probably fine for what they were. I never messed with them, right? They didn't appeal to me. But the way Classics recreated the style, the way Masterverse recreated the style, and the way Origins recreated the style, it makes it cool to me in a way that the old toys from 89, 90, they didn't make that version of He-Man cool to me. But the way the modern toy lines have recreated it, they make it pretty fucking cool to me. And on the back, you got this cool shot with the sword, the classic pose by the power of Eternia in this case, because that whole thing where he's patrolling space and he's the Galactic Protector now, he's off Eternia and he's on Primus and all that stuff. And, it was what it was. It was way too different for me. But, to be perfectly honest, when the DVDs came out for this cartoon, back in like 2005 or whatever it was, I picked them up immediately because as much as I didn't like the show as a kid, I couldn't wait to give it an honest chance as an adult. I couldn't wait to sit down with my girlfriend, now wife, and just say, hey, let's give this He-Man reboot an honest chance. Because we were kids when it came out, and kids can be very spiteful and judgmental, and very short of patience. Some of us grow out of that, some of us don't. But at the same time, I always felt like I was too dismissive as a kid of that show because it was so different from the original He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. And it is. It's so different that I maintain it works best if you don't even watch it as a He-Man show. Or if you do, you gotta pretend the original show didn't happen. It's just way too different. It's just completely its own thing, and I feel like it needs to be taken as that. And when we sat down together and we watched the DVDs, we came to a lot of conclusions, but ultimately, it's not a bad show. New Adventures of He-Man is not a bad show in and of itself. A lot of people, I saw just today, I was scrolling Facebook like an idiot, and I saw people talk about New Adventures of He-Man and say it was trash, and it was garbage, and it was worthless, and it was horrible, and it really upsets me to hear that, because number one, I've had the pleasure of conversing with Mr. Jack Olisker, who wrote most of the series, or all of the series himself, and was responsible for a lot of it from a story perspective, and he's a great guy, and I know he worked really hard on it, and he tried real hard to make it its own thing, but still make it really good, and he's aware not all of it was a hit. I certainly razz him about it, but at the same time, I feel like people don't give it an honest chance, right? New Adventures of He-Man is its own thing, and it's not a good follow-up to Filmation, I don't think. No, but it's a pretty good Star Wars riff in a time when Star Wars was kind of done, because this came out, the toys in 89, the show in 1990. Remember, Star Wars had been done for many years by that point, and there was only whispers that they were ever going to do more of that stuff. So there was kind of like a hole in the marketplace, especially to market to kids, some kind of like sci-fi adventure series, right? So all of a sudden there's this guy with a laser sword, and he runs around fighting bad guys with magic powers, and it's kind of interesting, and it's kind of similar and familiar, but at the same time it's its own thing, So when you watch that cartoon for what it is, I really think New Adventures is actually pretty cool. It definitely shouldn't be taken as a sequel to Filmation, I don't think. But I think if you just look at it as its complete, unique thing, I think it works pretty good. I think it's a pretty good action-adventure cartoon. It's definitely not perfect, The version of Skeletor definitely wasn't for everybody. He acted a lot like Jack Nicholson's Joker for me, which was hit or miss, but it definitely wasn't anything like any Skeletor we'd seen before or since. But, He-Man himself is always a pretty consistent character in how he acts and behaves. And, this guy, he didn't look like the He-Man I knew. I always mockingly refer to him as Yoga Pants He-Man, because, the guy's wearing, he's wearing fucking yoga pants. That's what it is. It's either yoga pants or blue jeans, and I don't see any pockets on this guy, so I'm saying he's wearing fucking yoga pants. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. But anyway. So yeah, great recreation of the character in Origins fashion. Beautiful artwork on the back. Like I said, the modern toys make New Adventures He-Man, the Galactic Protector, cool to me in a way that the original toys just didn't do. So what we're going to do once again is come back in just a short minute and slip this guy out and look at him in all his glory and splendor with all his weapons and posing and all that good stuff. We're going to be back in just a minute. Stick around. Are you having fun? I'm having fun. Like I said, Merry fucking Christmas to me, and I'm sharing it with you. How lucky are you? How lucky are you? By the power of Eternia, it's New Adventures He-Man. Unbelievable. 1990 recreated in Origins style. Once again, old school meets new school in a way that only Mattel can do. Gotta love it, man. You know, a lot of people, they really try to bring that old school flavor in a new school way, but you know, something about the way Mattel does it just really hits that sweet spot, brother. This, to me, is what I always wanted from a New Adventures action figure, and you know, I love the Classics version and I love the Masterverse version, but you know, I'm so glad to have this one as well. To my knowledge, they haven't and aren't planning on doing a single card of this. They may at some point, but for now, this is the only place to get your hands on the 1990 New Adventures He-Man Origins action figure, and I love everything about it. Once again, what can I say? I'm a mark for this shit. You know, this is good stuff. I thought it was an interesting design. I just didn't like the old toys and, you know, the cartoon. As a kid, I had a lot less patience for things than I do as an adult. Even in my early 20s, rewatching New Adventures, I saw it through a whole new light, and I didn't really have a problem with it then, other than it was just so different from the He-Man I knew. So I still think you gotta take it as its own thing, but if you do, there's a lot there to like, and there's a lot to like about this figure. It's a simple design, but it's a clean design, you know. This represents the shift from a barbarian into more science fiction territory for He-Man. He-Man was always about a mix of like Conan meets Star Wars. That's the simplest, with a little bit of Dungeons and Dragons type stuff thrown in. You know, this is the best way you could describe He-Man to somebody. It's like, you know, Conan meets Star Wars. And basically what New Adventures did was it really phased out the Conan and really amped up the Star Wars. And that's a way you can go. He-Man was originally supposed to be something that you could drop into any kind of environment and make something cool happen. And that's what they tried to do with New Adventures. It didn't take with a lot of people like me back then. The toys didn't do good. The show didn't do good. But you know, it wasn't bad. I'm proud to have the DVDs in my collection, and I'm proud to have this action figure in my collection. We are going to come back in just a second and get a little bit more hands-on with this really, really cool, really awesome, really amazing New Adventures He-Man Origins action figure. Stick around. Alright, we are back from the vault with New Adventures He-Man Origins action figure. Oh shit, that's fucking cold. Alright, woo! We're doing this. Okay, so one thing I didn't really get to say much about before, I forgot, because, you know, we're a few sheets to the wind here. From the vault, this is what we do. So I got you gotta love the art, you know. I thought it was very dynamic, even as a kid. This new He-Man logo, I think, is boss. I think that's pretty. Is that what the kids say? I don't. They say boss. So I actually like the He-Man logo, like as a reimagined He-Man logo, because you know it wasn't Masters of the Universe, it was just He-Man, New Adventures of He-Man, right? So I thought the logo was actually pretty cool. I love that starburst or that gleam or whatever it is in the background. I just think that's really cool. It really pops. You know, the figure stands out in front of it. Really cool. I mentioned the artwork, but man, that is cool stuff, man. You know, you got the skull in the background there, and you got the plants and everything. Like, it really sells the fact that this is a more science fiction He-Man than what we were used to, you know? As a kid, I couldn't appreciate it for what it was, and I take full responsibility for that. I don't make apologies for it, but it was what it was. It didn't thrill me as a kid, but as an adult, I can take it for what it is, and I like it just fine. The figure, oh, I like it just fine. This guy here, He's got the Origins articulation. One thing I will say, some of them, they don't have good front to back on the legs. Some of them just do not have good front to back on the legs. Mediocre side to side, Some of them are better than others with this line, but, some of them, this one does not have good front to back on the legs. The knees are good. The knees are really pretty good and pretty stable. I really like that. You got swivel at the boot, you got some really good Origins articulation here with this figure. It's just that some of them are really not good front to back on the legs. But what can you do? This guy, he's got a lot of other good points about him. All the other articulation aside from that is really good and really, really snug, like we talked about with the other figures in this box set. Really, really good articulation. The weapons with the vac metal finish, really cool. That sword could fit maybe a hair more snugly in his hand, but it's cool. This one, because it's vac metal, it's not a really entirely accurate representation of the original sword, but the style is, the shape of it and all that, really, really cool. Again, it's not the power sword to me. It's not the Sword of Grayskull to me. I can see what they were going for. It's definitely more traditional looking than what they did in the 2002 reboot. I'll say that. But yeah, I mean, it's a little weird to me then and now, but it's cool for what it is, and I like the way they recreated it for this toy. I really do. Same thing with the shield, It's a little bit basic for a He-Man shield. It looks kind of like a RoboCop kind of shield, if I had to compare it to something off the top of my head. I don't know. Maybe because it was... I don't know. It's just... But, again, this was a more Star Wars sci-fi version of He-Man for the late 80s and early 90s. This was a total reinvention. It wasn't supposed to have anything to do with the original, and it really didn't. I think if you take it for what it is, it's pretty cool, and this figure's pretty cool. It's a simple design, but it's a clean design. He still has a power harness, even though it's really just a belt across his chest, And again, the yoga pants. What else can you call it? What else can you call it? Wrestling tights? I mean, I wear wrestling tights, but I'm a wrestler. This dude's just wearing them because it's fun or something. I do it because I get paid to. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying. It's interesting from a guy who used to run around in fuzzy shorts is all I'm saying. I don't know. But it's fine, and this figure is a really great recreation of that design. There's no getting around it. From the ponytail, he kind of, a lot of He-Man, I always thought Lex Luger would have made an okay He-Man, because a lot of He-Man figures kind of remind me of Lex Luger at various stages of his career, and this one kind of does too. Maybe it's the ponytail, I don't know. They both had glorious mullets, but in any case, this guy's got the really cool articulation all over like a good Origins figure should have. He's got the really awesome weapons, sword and shield. Only two compared to the 2002 figure, but that's still one more than the Netflix CGI figure who only had the sword. So he's still coming up a little bit ahead here. Really like the likeness. I really love this figure, man. Like I said, as a kid, I have a much more objective appreciation for New Adventures. It's still not my favorite. It's far from my favorite version of He-Man by any stretch of the imagination. It's still, mid towards bottom just because it's so different from He-Man to me that I really don't feel comfortable calling it He-Man, It's totally its own thing. But what it is still pretty cool. And I really like this version, at least the way the modern action figures do it. Mattel, with classics and on, into Masterverse, with this box set, Origins, they've done a pretty good job of making this version of He-Man that got a lot of hate and scorn, and still does. I see it online all the time, and I think it's unfair. I really think it's unfair. There's nothing wrong with New Adventures He-Man. It's just different. Take it for what it is, not for what it isn't. It's not a good sequel to Filmation. It's really not. It's pretty bad at that, but it's pretty good as its own thing. It's a cool little Star Wars thing about a guy with a friggin' magic sword that turns him into a tough guy. It's still the same basic premise. They just turned it. They made a left turn with it. To me, it's still pretty cool as its own thing. And like I said, I would have loved a New Adventures figure done vintage style, and that's essentially what this is with all the modern articulation of Origins. How could you go wrong? This is an awesome figure. This is an awesome box set. Love everything about it, man. This is really cool stuff. Mattel really gave us a gift with this. This is something I wish I could have had as a kid. I would have been real little back then. I saw the toys in the stores and I just said, nah. I just, and to this day, I still haven't bought any for that same reason. It's just, there's a million things I'd rather have than those 1990 New Adventures of He-Man toys. I'll get them one day, but there's a million things I want to get first. You know what I mean? But it's not like I don't have any plans to get them or that I hate them. But this figure to me is something that as soon as I saw it, this actually this sold the box set to me. Because, a Filmation He-Man is really awesome. A 2002 He-Man is really awesome. But getting this figure specifically in Origin style, that actually, to be perfectly honest, was it sold the box set to me. That's what made it a must-buy to me. This figure right here. Because they didn't single card it, and who knows if they will. But to me, this is, if you're a He-Man fan, gotta have it. If you're a New Adventures fan, obviously you gotta have it. And I would not even say I'm a huge New Adventures fan. I just appreciate it objectively for what it is. But even if you're not, it's a great He-Man variant. It's a part of history. He-Man history. You gotta love it, man. Old school meets new school. This is what it's all about, Uh, definitely not my favorite He-Man, but one of my favorite Origins figures just because Origins is like a He-Man museum at this point. Just like Masterverse. They try to get everything in there from a different angle, They try to recreate a lot of that iconic shit. And this is iconic, like it or not. Even if it's not your favorite, I think you should still appreciate it for what it is. And New Adventures has its place in He-Man history without a doubt. And so does this action figure. This is a figure decades in the making, and I'm so glad to have it. So proud to have it. This box set is, God, it's worth every penny in my opinion, and we still have one more to go. One more to go. By the power of motherfucking Grayskull, we have one more figure to go in this amazing, absolutely incredible box set. Stick around for the big one I've been saving for last. You know what it is already, but you know what? I don't care. To me, it's like Christmas all over again. That's why I bought this fucking thing. Stick around. We're going to be back in a second. The fun never stops at Casa de RoxxStars. Stick around. Alright, and we've saved the big one for last. Now, I admit I'm a little bit biased, or maybe a lot, but bringing up the final spot here in our countdown for the 40th anniversary He-Man Master of the Universe animated series box set, we have, of course, the Filmation version of He-Man from the original cartoon series, which originally aired on September 26, 1983. I would have been 1 year and 2 days old when the first episode of this show aired. God, that's incredible to think about, but yeah. I literally grew up with He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. It was the first toy line I collected, the first I ever remember having. I'm sure that was thanks to my dad. But yeah, right from the beginning, I had He-Man and Skeletor and Battle Cat and Snake Mountain and Castle Grayskull. I had all of that stuff, and I had the golden books, and I had the comics that came with the figures. But then I remember the cartoon show coming out, and it was amazing. It was totally different from the He-Man that I already knew, but, I was a year old, so I wasn't exactly picky. It was just more stories with this character that I thought was so incredible and so cool, like Superman, but, he had a sword, and just, I didn't mind the changes that they made for the cartoon. As a kid, I didn't mind that they dumbed it down for kids because I was a kid. I was a year old when the show came out, and I watched it obsessively. I watched the Filmation He-Man and the Masters of the Universe show every day it would come on in blocks of an hour, and sometimes twice a day or sometimes four times. It would be like literally there was a time when you could watch an hour or two of He-Man in the morning and then an hour at night. It was crazy, but that's how it was in some areas, depending on where you lived, where it was syndicated. I remember mostly watching it on the USA Network on weekends, on the afternoons, Saturdays and Sundays, and then they used to replay it in the evenings around 7 or 8 o'clock for another hour on weekday afternoons. So, yeah, there was a lot of He-Man going on back in the 80s. It was a syndicated show that ran for 130 episodes between September 1983 to November 21st, 1985. It is still to this day the longest running and most successful He-Man animated series, and I think for good reason. It spoke to all of us kids back then a certain way. It was not necessarily always the most deeply written series or most well executed. There was a lot of things that people make fun of now, like we didn't get it back then. That's what I don't get. People make fun of the Filmation series sometimes, and they make fun of some of the things like the reuse of stop motion animation and the rotoscoping and things like that, and the reuse of certain things. And they criticize it like we didn't get it back then. Like, no, we got it. No, we got it. We were in on it. We thought it was cool. We thought it was cool that it was the same thing every time he would punch the screen or every time somebody would get ready to jump or throw somebody. Like, we thought it was funny. I don't know. It was hard to explain. You had to be there, I guess. But, we liked that the transformation scene took up like a good third of the episode. We loved that shit back then. What do you want me to say to you? You want to lie? No, we ate that shit up as kids. We thought it was cool. Nowadays, people look back on it and they're like, oh my god, these kids sat through the same thing every day. Yes, we did for hours, and we loved it. So go fuck yourself. It's just the way it was, man. Maybe you had to be there. I don't know. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you nothing that ain't true. What do you want me to do? Lie to you? Nah. So He-Man was a big fucking deal. You better believe it. For a while, it was bigger than any other shit. That Ninja Turtles and a G.I. Joe and a Transformers shit. He-Man, for a while, was bigger than all of that stuff. And you had to see it to believe it, but I'm telling you it was true. They used to have entire aisles in a toy line. Toys R Us and Kmart and all that stuff. They literally had the He-Man aisle. In a big cardboard cutouts and stuff of the logo and everything, and you'd go down there, and on one side at least, sometimes two, because sometimes one side would be figures and the other side would be vehicles, but sometimes they had it all on one side. But either way, that was the He-Man aisle. You go to Toys R Us and they're like, oh, so you got over here, you got like the Barbie aisle, and over here you got like the Cabbage Patch aisle, and then here you got the He-Man aisle. There you go, regular boy stuff with the G.I. Joe Transformer. Here you got the He-Man aisle. So that's where you had all the stuff, man. It was big. It was fucking huge. I lived it, man. And if you didn't live it, you didn't know. You don't know. So you can't talk shit about something you didn't know. But what we didn't have was a He-Man action figure that looked like He-Man did on the cartoon. Because again, the cartoon took a lot of liberties with the original He-Man in a lot of ways. Not just the story, but the design. They simplified the design quite a bit. They simplified the harness. They made the sword look a little bit different, But, as a kid, I mostly dug all the changes, and I wished I had a He-Man figure that looked like the cartoon. And I wished I had it. Now I do. Super 7 did one a few years ago. I got that one hanging out in the background over here. It's a cool figure too, but this one, you get Origins style, Origins articulation, man. Again, same gags on the back with the TV guide listings. You gotta love this stuff, man. Mattel really went all out with this set. They really did. Gotta love it. They make this thing look like a special collector's edition TV guide. Gotta love it. But see, that's the thing. I remember being a kid, like, I could read a little bit when I was like 4 or 5 years old. I remember being a little kid looking for He-Man and the Masters of the Universe in the TV guide. I knew how to read that. I knew what that looked like, God knows. I couldn't read everything, but I knew how to read He-Man and Masters of the Universe. So I looked through the TV guide, and I would see that, and I would circle that, and I would write that down somewhere to remind myself what time it came on. And I tried real hard never to miss an episode, man. Those are the fucking days. Especially before I had to worry about school and everything. That was like all I did. When I was real little, that's all I did was I'd wake up and I'd watch He-Man, and I'd get out my toys and I'd play with He-Man stuff, and then I'd take out my toy sword and run around the backyard and I'd play like I was He-Man, and then I'd come inside and I'd read my He-Man storybooks, and I'd eat, and then it was time for bed. My dad would read He-Man books and comics to me and stuff, and so yeah, that was my formative years, man. From being less than a year old to being like 5 years old, man. That's how my days went. With very little in between. It was like He-Man morning, noon, and night. It was awesome, and I loved it. It was some of the best times of my life, and that's why I still remember it so vividly, because it was some of the best times of my life. And that's part of why He-Man's so important to me, and always will be. And even though the cartoon isn't to me the best representation of the character, or even any more my favorite representation of the character, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a huge reason why I love the character and always love the character. So to have this kind of figure is more than what I always wanted, because as a kid, I couldn't imagine the kind of articulation that modern figures have, like the Origins line. I couldn't imagine that they would be able to get the level of detail and all that they do nowadays. I would have settled at the time for a regular vintage figure with a head that looked like the cartoon. But now I got something so much better than that. I'm so glad. I'm so happy. And I'm loving this artwork here, man. This is like some Andy Warhol shit, practically, right? This is some good stuff, Glamour shot of I have the power. This is what it's all about, right here, man. This is what it's all about. We're gonna take this guy open right here. Again, you got they were so considerate to give you these little tissue paper things to protect all this good stuff. And yeah, to be clear, this figure is not the same as the Filmation Cartoon Collection Origins line that's just starting to roll out all over the place. Because in case you didn't know, Mattel is pretty much taking regular Origins and putting it online only, and what's coming out at retail are going to be new Origins figures based on the Filmation cartoon. I love it. I'm really a big fan of that. At least the idea of them doing Filmation figures. But to be clear, the figure that's coming out at retail now is not the same as this figure. This figure is very, very different. The color, the head, everything, the detail, everything is different on this figure. So that's something to be aware of. This Filmation He-Man figure is not the same as the Filmation figure that's coming out to stores all over the place right now. So they're both definitely ones you want to track down. But yeah, so this figure here, it's got that very classic 1980s box art. God, as a kid, every time I tore open the wrapping paper and saw this background, I would freak out. I would just go crazy. Didn't matter what it was. It could be He-Man, it could be Buzz-Off, it could be Dragon Blast or Skeletor, it could be fucking Modulok. Fucking Modulok, right? It could be any of those things. It could be the Dragon Walker. That thing, I could never get that thing to work right. It could be Stridor. I could be Ninja. It could be any of those things. All of that shit, man. So many Christmases, so many birthdays. Growing up, when I was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, I'd be tearing open that wrapping paper, and I'd see that fucking logo staring at me. And man, that shit was magic. That shit was magic. If you weren't there, you don't know, and you're just never gonna know. It was the best feeling in the world. Best time of my life. And getting to relive that shit now, thanks to Mattel. I don't care how nitpicky you want to be about some of this stuff, man. It's amazing. You can tear it apart if you want to, but I just think it's amazing. So yeah, we got this amazing vintage box art with this really awesome recreation of Filmation He-Man in all his glory and splendor by the power of motherfucking Grayskull flipping around in the back, and you've got this incredible artwork calling down the thunder. He-Man bringing down the power of Grayskull, calling it down with the sword. Unbelievable. I always loved seeing this as a kid. I can't get enough of it now either. It's amazing. It's just amazing. Mattel really gave us a gift with this box set. You better believe it, man. I couldn't be more grateful. This is great stuff. This is the good shit, pal. I'm telling you, man. This is like, this is example of this is a great example of, it's not like it was when you were a kid. It's what you imagined you had as a kid or what you wished you had as a kid. It's like somewhere in between that. This is just really awesome stuff. We're going to be back, man. We're going to take this guy out. We're going to look at it up close. Man, I'm in nostalgia heaven right now. I already have some things I wish were a little bit better, but I'm not really worried about that shit. I'm just imagining being, 3 years old again, tearing open that wrapping paper, seeing that logo, getting another action figure from my favorite toy line of all time, Master of the Universe. Man, it's just, I'm never in the mood to nitpick these things. Not with this. Sometimes, some things, yes, all day long, but not with this kind of stuff. For me, this stuff is all about love, history, nostalgia, and all of that good stuff. Merry fucking Christmas. We'll be back in a minute. Stick around. And there he is, up close, out of the box, Filmation style He-Man Origins action figure. This is beyond my imagination as a kid, that having this kind of articulation and having the He-Man Filmation likeness, it's not perfect. I'll say a little bit more about it in a minute, but just, oh man, this is such cool stuff. I don't know. I'm glad they're actually doing single card figures that are out. I do like the single card Filmation He-Man that's out right now a little bit better than this one. We'll talk about that in due time. But again, this box set, the whole point was to recreate all 4 prominent He-Man animated versions, and this one is the be-all, end-all, the original, and how could you go wrong? It's been done before, Super 7 and other, times, but this is the first time you see it with this level of articulation and at the vintage scale as well together. This is the first time you see that, It's something that you only wished for as a kid. Now you have it. I'm so happy to have it. This box set is a 10 out of 10 for me. Some people passed on it because of the price, but I think for what you get, you definitely should jump on it while you can. It's something that it's only going to appreciate. You gotta believe, brother. You gotta jump on it while you can, and you gotta have this version of He-Man in your collection. Bottom line. Yeah, the single card figure's coming out. Yeah, it's a little bit better, but you know what? You can't sleep on this. This makes the whole box set right here, because this is the one you always have to have. The original, the first vintage animated series figure. We'll be back to look at it in more detail up close, moving around, but looking at it, a few nitpicks aside, this is the figure you wanted as a kid but didn't get to have. Nothing against the original He-Man action figure sculpt, but you wanted as a kid, you watched the cartoon and you wished you saw all the other variants of He-Man, from Thunder Punch to all the other ones, and you said, can't we just have a Filmation cartoon animated variant of He-Man? And back then the answer was no, but now we get to have it. Not only that, we get to have it with the modern articulation combined with the vintage scale. Gotta love it. So we'll be back in just a hot minute, but for now, it's enough just to really take a look and see that this is where it all began. And seeing it now, done the way we do now, with all these modern touches that make it so neat. Man, this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Stick around and we'll be back to take a more up close look, but for now, I'm in heaven, man. This is some cool shit. Stick around.
By the power of
Alright, here it is. Filmation He-Man Origin style action figure. I saved this one for last because, like I said, Filmation is what I grew up on. Huge fan of the original series. Understand it's not perfect, you know, I appreciate it for what it is, flaws and all. Always wanted this kind of figure as a kid. Now I finally get to have it. Unbelievable. Yeah, Super 7 did one. It's hanging out behind me, but you know, this one, it's got a little bit more, maybe a little bit more accurate cartoon likeness. I love that they have the sheath on the back for the sword, because it was not always there in the cartoon, but you know, a lot of times when they needed to show him pulling out the sword, it would be there, and it usually wouldn't be there in the very next scene. And yeah, we did notice that stuff as kids. We were not so nitpicky back then, but yeah, we did notice it. That's why I'm talking about it. But yeah, so I like that detail. I really, again, love how all the weapons and accessories in this box set have that metallic vac metal look to them. I mean, some people don't dig it, but I do. I think it just gives it a unique look, a really nice, stylish flair to it. It simplifies all the details of the original Origins He-Man figure. The belt, the wrist bracers, the armor, all of that stuff is heavily simplified from the original action figure. You know, it doesn't have any of the flair and details because they weren't there in the cartoon either. The cartoon got rid of the checkers on the harness and all the flair on the wristbands and belt. It went for just a very linear, simplistic style because it was easier to draw and animate. You know, you made do with what you could back then. So this is actually a pretty faithful recreation. You know, it's the way the harness sits is more accurate. The shape of the harness and the way it sits is more accurate than the one Super 7 did a few years ago, back in 2017 or whatever that was. So yeah, this is not the first attempt at redoing Filmation He-Man in 5.5 scale, but you gotta believe that this is one of the better ones. I do think the one coming out on the single card is a little bit better for a few reasons. I think his likeness is a little bit too Valentine's Day. He's puckering up, like he looks like he's getting ready to go on a date with Tila, and that's fine. He-Man in the cartoon, he did have a rather puckish expression, so to speak, but this guy takes that sort of to an extreme. You know, I don't know. I think they could have done that maybe a little bit better, but it's fine. I think the head on the new single card figure is a little bit better. The articulation, like I said, is great. You got some really good, almost ratchety articulation in certain spots. It's really snug. You know these guys are going to hold their pose, and that's really cool. I don't do it, but I know people say they swap parts. I wouldn't want to do it with these though. These box set figures. I think these are too special to do that with. I'm just saying that I know like parts are generally modular in this toy line, this Origins toy line, but I wouldn't want to do that. But I love the articulation. You get a little bit, you know, looser joints in some areas than in some of the other figures in the set. The legs on all four of them are, you know, kind of limited to a degree, but this one stands pretty well in most positions. You know, again, most of the joints, the knees, the shoulders, the elbows, the ankles, most of the joints are really, really snug on these guys, and you can get them in a lot of different poses. Love the sword. I said, this is the sword I grew up with. This is the way, to me, when I think of the He-Man sword. I regret that I still haven't gotten this as a tattoo somewhere. I still hope to. But yeah, to me, this is what the sword looks like. This is just, to me, really cool recreation of it, style. Again, the vac metal isn't necessarily for everybody, but for me it works. Fits really great right in the sheath, just like that. So now, we're back to only one weapon, but in the cartoon, he only ever carried the sword. You never saw him with the axe or the shield, so this is accurate. It feels, you know, in a way, compared to, for example, the 2002 action figure, which came with the sword, the shield, the axe. That's the big winner as far as the accessories go. But this version of He-Man, you know, they're keeping it real. They're keeping it to the cartoon, and he only ever really had the sword in that cartoon. So that is accurate. Good for them. Love the sheath, you know. People argue about what side it's supposed to be on. I don't really care as long as it's there and he can put the sword there because it helps. It fits way better that way than just sticking it into the back of the harness or whatever other way they've done it in the past. This is a really good way to do it. Really happy they did it. The colors are great. Like I said, I'm not in love with the likeness necessarily, but it's fine. The haircut is great. This is a really, really great figure, man. The articulation is badass. You know, this is just Mattel really goes above and beyond with a lot of their stuff. You know, I'm not like, you know, nobody pays me to say any of this. God knows I'm not paid to say absolutely any of this. I wish. But the fact of the matter is, they really give us some awesome stuff, man. And I'm always talking about bringing the old school to the new school. And just in general, Masters of the Universe Origins is all about that. And this figure right here, Filmation He-Man, done with the Origins style articulation, is just the perfect example of bringing old school to new school in all the best ways. I can't say enough good things about it. Yes, I've had a few too many tonight. It's the holidays. It's about to be New Year's. Like I said, this was a Christmas present to myself, and it's one of the best I've ever given myself. I'm not going to lie to you, man. This is some awesome, awesome, awesome stuff. We are going crazy over here looking at these Master of the Universe 40th anniversary action figures. This box set to me, yeah, okay, $150. Okay, you spend more than that on other bullshit. Don't lie to me. For me, for a set like this, with the collector's packaging, with the unique sculpts and weapons, the fact that some of these figures are not on a single card, to me, New Adventures He-Man and Filmation He-Man, for me, sold the box set. 2002 and Netflix He-Man just put it over the top. But yeah, this figure, this is beyond anything I would have wanted as a kid. Because back then, you know, they didn't have the articulation and everything they have now. But I would have settled for just having the He-Man animated series head and armor. And to have that and the origin style, man, this is incredible. Just for kicks, because it's here, I'm going to go all the way back, and I'm going to bring out the very first series, Origins He-Man. I grabbed this as soon as they came out, this figure here. So this is before any of the revisions or changes or any of the running changes they made to the line as it went on. This is the original vintage Origins He-Man with the head sculpt not everybody loves and all that good stuff. And, you know, it's got its own issues, but, you know, I just wanted to show here for the sake of it. You know, you've got the vintage style, and then you got the Filmation style, and, you know, man, you know, just to even have the option and this kind of variety is beyond what we could have imagined. Like, we're getting all the stuff we only wish we had as kids, and some people don't appreciate it. I think you guys are crazy to not appreciate it. This stuff, even if it's not perfect, it's still amazing stuff, man. It's amazing stuff. God, I love Master of the Universe. I love He-Man. It's just great stuff. So yeah, it's like, you know, you can pick your favorites, you can pick your preference and all that good stuff, but to me, just the fact that we get all this cool shit nowadays, man, it's beyond what I could only dreamed of having as a kid. So yeah, to me, the reason I saved this one for last, like I said, is because this is the He-Man that I predominantly grew up paying attention to from when I was very little. 1 year and 2 days old, man. But I know I was there from the beginning. And if my dad was here, he'd still tell you that. If he was still here, he would go on all day long, because he used to sit on the couch and watch the cartoon with me and all that good stuff. And those were the days, like I said. Those are the goddamn days. You can't go back, but thanks to Mattel, 2023, if you got a lot of money and a good job, like I do, and, you know, you're very well, you know, well supported by the people around you, you get to relive your childhood with all this amazing stuff. So we're going to be back in just a minute to recreate it. finish it up, wrap it up, whatever the hell you want to say. Happy fucking New Year and Merry fucking Christmas. We'll be back. I'm having a great time. You can tell that. We're gonna see you real soon with the big finale. Just hang out. Be patient, please. I appreciate you sticking with me. We're gonna take it home. I promise. Stick around. Guys, what else can you say? What else can you say? This 40th anniversary He-Man Through the Ages animated series box set from Mattel is absolutely incredible. Whether it's the original Filmation, whether it's New Adventures, whether it's Netflix CGI, or whether it's the 2002 reboot, man, Mattel really knocked it out of the park, recreating each of the main and most iconic animated versions of He-Man. Doing it Origins style, it's just too much, man. It's just too much. And I know Masterverse is out there doing a lot of the same stuff at a bigger scale with more articulation, and that's awesome too. I love that stuff. We're going to talk about that stuff. But the fact of the matter is, I'm still a sucker for the vintage 5.5 scale action figures. That's what I grew up on with He-Man. So anything having to do with that, even from other lines like Funko and Super 7, when I see that style of action figure, I'm all about it. To get it from Mattel with the newer, more modern articulation, but that vintage 5.5 scale, and to get these versions of He-Man that we haven't gotten otherwise, single card or in past lines, to me that just puts it way over the top. Even if it's something like Netflix He-Man that I'm not a huge fan of, or even if it's something like New Adventures, which I didn't love as a kid, these are great figures. These are amazing He-Man action figures, and I'm so glad to have each and every one of them. And even if you have single card 2000 and X He-Man, even if you have the new single card Filmation He-Man, I still think you really should get this box set because each of these figures is unique in its own way. They really do a great job of representing each of the 4 animated eras of He-Man. They're all iconic, they're all amazing, they're all their own thing, and I love Mattel for giving us these amazing figures in this incredible box set. What else can you say? The sculpts are amazing, the details are amazing, the packaging is amazing, that TV style outer box that I showed you at the beginning is amazing. It's almost too much to take in. We've said all that can be said. You got to pick it up. Right now it's still available on Mattel Creations website for $150. I definitely think you should get it. You're only going to pay more for it later on. I mean, eventually they're going to run out of them, and you're going to be looking for them 10 years from now. I promise you that. You're going to be looking for this set, and you're going to wish you got it now when it was just $150. What can you do? I mean, it's not like they made a million of them. I'm glad I got mine, though. Merry Christmas to me. Happy New Year to you. I hope you guys had a Merry Christmas. I hope you guys got He-Man toys, or DC toys, or WWE toys, or whatever you're into, man. I hope you got a lot of it for Christmas. I had an amazing Christmas, not just thanks to this set. I had a lot of great stuff coming my way, and I'm so grateful for all of that. And I'm so grateful for this. Thanks to Mattel. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to all of you for sticking around. Hope you had a Merry Christmas, and I hope you have a Happy New Year. We're going to be coming at you with a lot of stuff in 2024, a lot of He-Man stuff. That's something to look forward to on From the Vault, Rikki Roxx, God of Thunder, Lord of Rock and Roll, collector of action figures. I don't have any furniture left because all I got is toys stacked up all over my house. That's just the way it is. That's the way I want it. That's just the way I live, brother. We party all the time. We rock and roll all night and party every day. And that's the way it's going to be, rocking and rolling into the new year. It's time to say goodbye, unfortunately, but I had a great time. I hope you did too. 2023 was okay. As far as collecting toys, it's been great. Hopefully 2024 is going to bring even more of this amazing goodness from Mattel and other companies. And I'm going to share everything I get with you. Just be patient. We're going to get to everything in time. We got more He-Man. We got more DC. We got more wrestling stuff. We got a lot more to come. Just stick around. Until then, this is Rikki Roxx, God of Thunder, Lord of Rock and Roll, action figure collector extraordinaire, saying Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. If you can't be good, be bad, baby. And sometimes it hurts. It's good. That's just the way it is. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.